2 o'clock. Here we go. 30 minutes. Everything you never wanted to know about food contact materials. Intriguing why you are intrigued and joined this session. Obviously, it's 30 minutes, which is really a nutshell. I mean, we have a colleague called René van Gemert, and he can give you paid trainings on these topics for days in a row. This is not a legal advice, but you have been able to see the disclaimer. Food contact materials in 30 minutes, an Action Supplier Compliance Tuesday special. It's like speed dating. What is food contact materials? Well, it's everything that comes into contact with food or feed. This is also the animal food part. What is interesting about food contact materials that even you would consider them non-food products, they have their own framework. So it's legislation that is really a little bit different than what you would say General Product Safety Regulation or the 2019 1020 framework for harmonized goods. Of course, there's similarities, but it's still also in need of updating. Not all the supply chain roles are in there. It's the 935204. It needs updating for sure. It's been updated by the 2019 1381 in June 2019, but that didn't really impact the legal part of the framework. It's more or less impacting the way the European Commission is developing new legislation and the transparency around that. What is interesting is that it has a sibling, basically. All food contact materials must be manufactured in accordance with good manufacturing practice. That's a regulation, which means it's the same legislation in all the EU member states since 2006. It's very important, this connection, and I'll explain it later why. It is partly harmonized, so there's specific union legislation on certain materials, but it's also partly still not harmonized, so national legislation. So it's hybrid. Yes, it's hybrid. It needs updating. Oh, definitely it needs updating. It's a special framework. It has its own page, and as always, the URLs that you need are in the material, and you will get the material after the sessions, probably in the next coming days, because we are working on many topics. It has also its own recall platform, and that is called RASFF, the Rapid Alert System for Food and Feed. That's why you don't see food contact material recalls on the EU Safety Gate RAPEX. Nothing goes wrong with forks and spoons and knives and plates. Well, yes, it goes wrong, but it's not where you look. Actually, RASFF platform is much older than RAPEX. It was created in 1979, and it's celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. Well, that was a little bit time ago, so it's already almost 45 years old. If you would go to that platform, link there, and you would go to type, and you say notification type food contact material, and you do search for this year, you find 168 notifications. You would say that's not a lot, but if you would look for toys on RASFF, would you find 168 notifications in this year? Ooh. Remember, this is a very particular category of products. I'll give you some examples. Notification: the unauthorized use of bamboo fibers mixed with plastics in food contact materials from France, made in China. So there's a French brand selling products that are made in China. This is a nice example because there was always discussion about using bamboo fibers instead of wood fibers into plastics, and that is not allowed because bamboo is not on the so-called union list or positive list. And that, what is that? I will explain in a slide or two later. Examples of food contact materials: containers for transporting food, but also machines to process food, packaging material, kitchenware, and tableware. Actually, there are a lot of electronic devices that we use in our kitchen that have food contact material aspects. If you bring a coffee maker to DEKRA, you let it test for DEKRA for KMACUR or your TUV for TUV approval. Question is, are they looking at food contact material aspects or just at electrical safety and related EMC? Chances is that they are, which is not enough for the scope of compliance of the product. The key word when you look at food contact material is inert. Inert means stays where it is, will not move, will not influence. The whole idea is when you have a plate with a Mickey Mouse on it, you don't want to eat the Mickey Mouse nor the plate. You want to eat the food. So food contact materials should not adversely affect my health, your health, consumer health, or, also important, it could not affect my health, but it could influence the quality of food. And that is also not allowed. This in a very expensive and complex word that you probably have never heard or seen, except in this context, called organoleptic characteristics. It should not change composition of the food or taste, smell, look, or feel. Smell is interesting. It's actually a sensory test of this legislation. Imagine you are walking somewhere in a showroom, on a trade show, in a store, and you see something that is food contact material, and you smell it, and you smell something. What are you smelling? Substances that are released from that product, which you don't want to eat, which means it's not inert. Very simple. It's not cosmetics, right? What is very relevant, and that is the similarity to food, is that they want to guarantee a full traceability. If something goes wrong, you need to be able to recall it through the complete supply chain. And that is why they demand good manufacturing practice. Good manufacturing practice actually means that anywhere in the supply chain, you could basically take a sample and ask the one that is responsible for the process, where is this coming from? And where is it going to? So if you have a chain of steps and confirmation to the whole supply chain, you could be able to answer these questions of traceability. In fact, if you really look into the legislation, any party that sells food contact materials should be able to apply good manufacturing practice principles, even stores. Reason is, for example, if you have knives and you want to sell knives from a shelf, you need to have the traceability until the box is emptied into the shelf on the store. So you need to have first in, first out, you need to have traceability of materials. If you are a truck driver and you are driving food contact materials, you don't want to drive chemical waste the day after. You want to ensure that you don't add anything to the, anything to the food contact materials. Two other words that are relevant are specific migration limits and total migration limits. Yeah, and specific migration limits, as it says, it's something from one substance migrating from the food contact material. And the total is the total of all the specifics. So you will have two limits. Some substances can leave the product, but with a certain maximum. But the total of material is leaving the food contact material product cannot reach the total limit. Two limits. If you have food contact materials made out of plastics, you actually must select materials from a positive list. It's very relevant. You buy something, a food container made out of plastic, and the manufacturer says, oh, you ask me all kinds of things about the materials used. Well, it's 100% from X. Okay, so this 100% of X, why does it have color? Why is it soft? Why is it? You know, all those features do not come from a shape, they come from materials. Plastics, you must choose all the ingredients, including the colorant, including the plasticizer, everything from the positive list, because all the combinations on the positive list have been tested to be stable / inert for food contact materials. Yeah. Not for all food, another aspect. You also will have to meet specific material legislation, EU or member state level. Do you need to follow all the member states, or can you pick a member state? In fact, you can, because there is something called what's this called? You can actually choose a member state and use that legislation as relevant for the other countries. I'll come to that. What is also interesting is that this has a DOC. There is actually a mandatory European food contact material DOC. Not CE, no, but there's a DOC. We are on schedule. In total, the food contact material legislation lists 17 different kinds of materials, and they all have their own pieces of legislation. Only harmonized for plastics, national legislation for all the others. Remember, rubbers and silicons are not plastics. Oh, yes. You can forget the numbers. There's a special regulation under the framework for the plastic food contact materials. It has the union list of substances, that is the positive list. Each of those substances that you can use has their own number, a CAS number, like with other chemicals, which makes it easier to communicate. Otherwise, you need to talk about the hexa something 5 beta something something. Now you just can talk about a number. It also specifies migration limits for these substances. But in general, the total migration from plastic to food cannot exceed 60 milligrams per kilo. There's even a new regulation set for rules for recycled plastics, which makes it interesting. Otherwise, it would be very, very difficult to use recycled plastics into new plastic food contact materials. You can find the union list on the ECHA website, the REACH websites. The link is there. It has all the materials. How about good manufacturing practice? Well, it has a number of goals. It must ensure that everybody that is creating and these materials are understanding what the impact is and what they do. You need to have documented quality assurance and quality control systems maintained at the premises. Oh, but my supplier doesn't have information, but he needs to have good manufacturing practice, so he should have information. And they need to understand that you need to start with suitable material for the manufacturing process. And now you come to the material. Raw material actually could be suitable for different foods. So for food contact material, it's crucial to include information on all the ingredients used up front. And not, I don't know what's in there, let's do risk-based testing on the end. This is what some of the labs offer because you ask for it, but officially it's not a bailout. You need to know what's in there. About products originated or consigned from China or Hong Kong, there's additional requirements for kitchenware made of melamine or polyamide. You need to have a declaration and a lab report to be handed to customs at least 2 days before arrival. Interesting. I found this image. This is in this case about a food packaging foil, but it doesn't really matter. It's food contact material. There's actually multiple DOCs that are moving to the supply chain. So the raw material supplier makes a plastic and says, these chemicals are suitable to be used for plastic granulate. For example, let's say you have a yellow plastic granulate that is suitable for all kinds of foods, and you make a plate out of it. So you just don't need to add anything during the production, and you basically take the original approval with you to the end product. That makes it interesting. So there's multiple declarations of conformity with more and more information added till there's a final one at the end of the supply chain. It's really a document trail in that sense. We have a Verify Smart form in Project EP to make the European Food Contact Material Declaration of Conformity. You need to indicate which materials you have used up to the CAS numbers, really. And because of that, sometimes you have plastic, sometimes you have metal, sometimes you have something else, a laminate. You will draw in different kind of legislation. So you can also refer to national legislation that you have picked. And now it's interesting that you need to indicate what food you are using. Because you could say we have a food test report of the container, and then you look into it and the lab has tested it for cold water storage for 2 hours. But actually, if you look at it, it's actually a box that people will use to store food in the refrigerator, or maybe they will deep freeze it. So it's actually a food container where people put in hot food, all kind of food. Could be fatty food, could be sour food, could be sweet. It's hot. They let it cool in it. They put a lid on it. They put it in a refrigerator for a number of days. It's maybe frozen. They take it out. You put it in the microwave to heat it up, and then you dishwash it, and then you use it again. For that kind of usage, there's suitable plastics. But you can also let it test only for, 2 hours cold water storage. The lab will just test for what you want to test. Very careful in reading test reports on food contact materials. What kind of materials is actually used? Salt food, sweet food. For all those kind of foods, they have test substances that they use as a replacement during test. Otherwise, you need to test with real food. Contact duration is relevant. Repetition is relevant. So throwaway is definitely something else as reuse. Think about your thermos flasks where you have hot coffee for many, many times. Contact temperature cycles is also relevant. Heating up different than just putting in fixed temperature materials. And last but not least, what is the surface that is in contact with the food? Because you need to measure the surface, because the surface is the exposure of the material to the food, and you have migration over the whole surface. And then migration test results that are coming out of that reasonable expected intended use, what you just described: food, duration, repetition, temperature, cycle, surface. You have your SMLs and your TMLs. Wow. Yes, indeed. Wow. Here you have an example of a mixed product, hybrid product, a barbecue meat thermometer. It has a harmonized section, some electronics there. You mentioned on that declaration of conformity, your CE declaration, you mentioned RoHS and EMC, and maybe if it's a Bluetooth product, you will have RED and RoHS, so you have 2 kind of legislation and CE. Metal as food contact material is not harmonized, so you still will have to have a food contact materials regulation declaration on that metal part. It doesn't make sense to test it for all the countries. You can pick any European country's food contact material regulation law for metal and test it according to that one, and add a mutual recognition declaration, that was the word I was seeking for, that refers to which country you picked. What country should you choose? I would just look at the commercial side of it. If your main customers are, for example, in Germany and France, you might opt for going for France and Germany, but you don't need to test for all. You could test for Italy and then use an MRD, a mutual recognition declaration, that you say, we used the Italian law for metal food contact parts, and we use that as the right to place the product on the EU market. Remember, when you use an MRD and use Italy, for example, as reference country, your product needs to be suitable to sell in Italy. You need to participate in Italian recycling schemes. You need to have a CE declaration that is also available in the Italian language. You will have to do as if you have sold one product at least active in that market. Yeah. So you will have 3 declarations which allow you to access the entire European market. You don't merge these 3. They are completely different, and you can make them all via product IP. Oh, how to test then all these products? Because there's a lot of questions. I have an item here. Is it food contact material, and should I test it? There is a tremendous document called the Guidelines on Testing Conditions for Articles in Contact with Foodstuffs. It is, of course, in Product IPedia available, but it's also here. I will incorporate the last version in the set. I'll give you some examples. What should we do with towels, wipes, napkins, tablecloths, placemats, etc.? Well, they have written something down for that, for many of those products, and how to test it, and which simulants you need to use. And the simulants are the ones that replace a kind of food that is out there. Otherwise, you need to test with milk, or which kind of milk, or fat, which kind of fat. So they use simulants A, B, D, etc. Yeah. It even says something about cheesecloths. It is an amazing document. You'll be surprised which articles are in there. Also, things like the coffee maker I mentioned before. And here it says you need to test the article itself. Actual use, and repeat with simulant A 3 cycles. So you'll be surprised if your product is not in there, then it's really either you're not seeking for the right word, or you have a new product for the market, but find a similar one. You'll be amazed what test programs are already there. One of the questions we often get is this symbol mandatory? Because this is food contact material, right? Yes. However, if a product is obviously suitable to be used as food contact material, then you don't need this symbol. If you feel that customers may doubt if it's suitable to be used as food contact material, you have like a certain of dish or a bowl, and it's like, is it a decorative object? No, people can also use it to store fruit. Then you might use this symbol. But remember, if you use this symbol, then it's obviously that you see the intended use as being used as food contact material. Yeah. Then you need to follow the whole route, and then somebody in the supply chain who's making that bowl need to have good manufacturing practice. And the symbol that you use need to be at least 50 by 50 millimeter, 5 by 5 centimeters. Quite big. I need to check that. It should not be 5 by 5 millimeter. That should be small. Is there more information available? Yes, we have a lot of information at Product IP. We also will have specific trainings on this, but if you want to do food contact materials, I really, really recommend that you will start with chemical trainings first before you move into food contacts. Because it's really a very, very complex world. I can do that in half an hour. I can do that in half an hour. I want to go back to one thing for you guys, and that's this. This good manufacturing practice, I do feel, is the leverage when you look at this legislation. We have many customers that started with suppliers that don't have a quality system that is approved according to this. And then you find yourself in chasing information, always new parts, always new substances that they use. You cannot rely on the outcome that they have from their own tests. So you're basically forced to use a laboratory. But the results that you get out of that route are actually non-compliant with the legislation. The only thing what you need to do if a factory has a certified good manufacturing practice quality system is to do spot checks. Because it's part of their duty to know what they are using and to understand that the substances they are using are suitable for the applicable use. So if they are not sure about the way that you're going to use the product, they will ask, do you know anything about the food that it will be in contact with, temperatures, cycles, etc., etc. And you can say, oh, a factory with good manufacturing practice regulation, quality system will be a more expensive factory, but it's not. Because everything that comes out of that factory is information you can rely on. And what you will do is, on top of it, you will add spot checks by laboratories to just say, hey, this factory says these are the migration levels. Can you just run a test on that? So basically, you're spot checking if the performance outcome of the quality system of that factory is actually suitable or not. You will see your time to market is a lot more reliable, and you stop managing surprises basically, and you start managing performance. And if you look at this, if this is required in 2006 and they need to have information, why are you chasing information requests for companies that should have information? Yeah, so it's really, really relevant. The reason why it has its own framework, and the reason why it has a recall platform that is linked to food is, if you are wrong with food contact material related products in the migration level, you will have a recall. There's no excuse. There was no, we can fix this. There's no risk on this. Can we sell it out, etc.? No, there's no discussion. The same with food. The market surveillance authorities will not take any risks with this, because you're basically eating chemicals on the long run. And you can argue it's only a little bit, but the whole reasoning about very, very low limits on the intake of chemicals is we hopefully live long and we are subjected to chemicals all our life. And that only can work if the exposure limits are very, very low. And you cannot argue on an individual case with market surveillance authorities about that. So 25 minutes. Everything you didn't want to know about food contact materials. Any questions? Or are you now numb? You could even, if you want to allow to talk, I can allow you to talk. You raise your hand and fine with me. If not, then I'm off to the next session in 15 minutes. And I wish you all a great day. And if I don't speak to you again, a fantastic season's holiday later this month. Bye-bye.